using selectors. Okay, now let's go to the diagram. This is our selector. Okay, this is what we use to select a specific input to be displayed at the output Y. Okay, now to do that, these are the configurations we use to select any of these inputs: input D0, D1, D2, D3, and channel that specific input, any of which is here, to the output Y. So before we get into the simulation of the multiplexers, I want you to know that this is the building blocks of the multiplexers, using an OR gate and an AND gate as well as a NOT gate to implement working the working backgrounds of multiplexer. Now let's get straight into the simulation of it. So now before then, I want us to look at the current values inside the input section. So at D0 we have a 0, D1. At D0 we have a 0, D1, we have a 1, D2 we have a 0, and D3 we have a 1. Okay, so the values in here are not permanent. Okay, you can choose any values here, any of which you want. Okay, but I decided to go with 0, 1, 0, 1. You could choose any one which you desire. So for the first phase of this simulation, let's go with this. Okay, then I'll alternate to any other value so that you see how it works. Now, looking at this input and the output here, the selector is currently at 0, 0. So what you are currently seeing is 0. Now this 0 is not just any 0 from any part of the input, but a specific 0. Okay, it's coming from the input D0. Now why D0? You can see that the selection here configuration 0, 0 points to D0. Hence, the value at D0 is channeled to the output, which is 0. Now let's take a look. Now I want us to choose an input that we want to display at the output. Okay, let's choose the input D3 and display it at the output Y. To do that, you have to configure our selectors to do that. Okay, so now what is the configuration for our selectors to display the value in the input D3 at the output Y? That will be 1, 1. So now let's do that. 1 over here and 1 here. Now you can see 1 here. Okay, where is this 1 coming from? It's coming from the D3 input, which is 1, and is then channeled to the output 1. You see how this works. Okay, now let's go on and display the value in the input D2. Okay, the selection for that, configuration selection for that in the selector area will be 1, 0. So to display the input of D2 at the output Y, we just have to input this configuration at the selector 1, 0 and display it at Y. Now let's look at that. So 1 is already in S0 of the selector. Now S1, let's set that to 0. Now what do we see? We see 0. Where is 0 coming from? It's coming from the D2 input, which has a value 0. Now all this comes about by the combination of the building blocks of circuit, which is the AND gate, OR gate, and the NOT gate. This means about selectors. Okay, so the main part of a multiplexer is the selectors, the input and output. And once again, for a multiplexer, you are selecting a specific input. Okay, there are various of input, okay, that are available. Okay, and you are deciding to choose just a specific input to be displayed at the output. So numerous input just an output. So that's what you are typically doing with a multiplexer, and that's what all multiplexer is about. So that's all for multiplexers. Now let's move on to decoders. Okay, let's move on to decoders. Now this is a decoder. Okay, we'll use the same idea of the selectors. Okay, same idea here for the selectors here. Now the selectors here are A and B. Okay, now based on the value of the selector, we get to arrive at a specific output. Okay, so this is the inverse of a multiplexer, you could put it that way. So for a decoder, you just have one input, and that input is channeled to various of specific output. So these are the outputs. We have our output x1, x2, x3, and s4. This is a 2x4 more decoder. Okay, we have two selectors here, which are the input selectors. We choose to make our configuration and choose a specific output for based on what our inputs are. So this is a 2x4, as you can see. So now let's simulate how the workings of a 2x4 decoder is. So now to select the first value, okay, as you can see, the first value is already selected, which is the first value of the output x1 is already selected. Okay, if you want to output the value of x4, we want to output what x4 should be. Okay, we want to have an output at x4. Okay, just as x4. Now you could use the DSTV decoder as an analogy for this. Okay, there are numerous channels on the decoder for you to watch, but you use the remote to select a specific one. Okay, so the remote is serving as an input. Okay, to choose a specific output that you want to watch. So now let's go to the selectors. Now we want to select x2. For x2, leave it to 0 and choose x1. Then you can see now x2 is being selected. Now we have our output at x2. We want to select s4. If 0, 0, select x1, then probably with the selection here,